Hello and welcome to everyone in here and joining us via the live stream. It's so good to see you. My name is Tanja Koenig and I will be your moderator. But before I invite the speakers onto the floor, I would like to paint a picture of the future, to take you on a journey. So picture this. It's 2034 and we're right here in this room. And outside, snow is falling, so quite a similar scene to today. But in this future, we've made huge progress on our transition to green energy. It's no longer a promise, but a reality. Many of you have traveled from homes cooled and warmed by green energy. You walk along the streets lit by zero-emission streetlights, and the roar of the combustion engines has been replaced by the hum of electric vehicles. Those of you who flew to Switzerland boarded planes using sustainable aviation fuel. And our industries, they have changed too. In this future, green molecules, hydrogen and biofuels, have fulfilled their potential, and big players in heavy industry, including steel, now operate their machines with zero environmental impact. We have green molecule-powered shipping, with cargo ships gliding across seas, propelled by fuel cells. And picture zero-emission trucks crisscrossing our continents, traveling 1,000 kilometers without having to refuel. This is a future that we have built together. It's been a people-powered green transition. Hundreds of thousands of workers have acquired new skills to do these jobs that wouldn't have existed without green molecules. And these people don't just work in the energy sector, but along the whole value chain of green molecules. So in sectors such as commerce, services, construction, and education, all contributing to an increase of GDP in Europe. Now, this is a future that is possible, but it's not guaranteed. So right now, we're at the critical moment in time where we can choose to take the right actions to grasp this opportunity. But right now, in 2024, we actually don't have the people with the right skills to move this transition forward. So this is what we're going to be talking about in the next 40 minutes. It's what is the scale of the green molecule opportunity, what jobs will be created, and how do we ensure that we build the right workforce and take advantage of this opportunity. And with that, I would like to introduce our speakers onto the stage who are actually working towards this future. Please join me in welcoming Becky Frankowitz, Chief Commercial Officer at ManpowerGroup. Hello. Martin Wetzelaar, CEO of Cepsa. And Andrea Fuder, Chief Purchasing Officer at Volvo. Thank you so much. Very quickly, did I describe that right?
Very well done.
Good, good. So before we go into the conversation, we're going to start with a fun game because we realize that you might be using terms that might not be familiar to everyone. So I'm going to challenge our speakers here with a few terms, and they have 30 seconds to actually describe these terms. So let's start with you, Martin. I would like you to define green molecules in 30 seconds. What are they and what makes them so special?
Go.
So we all know what green electrons are. They're basically electrons generated by solar and wind. And they are the cheapest and fastest way to decarbonize energy usage in the world. So we should convert all our electricity to solar and wind or hydro-based electricity, and we should electrify all the energy usage we can in order to make use of those green electrons. But there are big energy usages that simply cannot be electrified because they need a molecule, either because of energy density. You can't get a container ship to Singapore on a battery, or a plane to New York on a battery, or because of energy potential. You can't make steel. You need 1200 degrees to make steel. That the electricity can't do that. So there are various reasons why molecules are needed. There are two types of green molecules. One is called so-called e-fuels that use green electrons to make green molecules, and there's the biofuels-based corridor, and both green molecules matter, and together they will need to serve 50% of the global energy, because that's what these hard-to-electrify sectors add up to. So it's very, very important and relevant part of the energy transition, and the most difficult one.
Great, thank you so much, Martin. Electrons versus molecules. We got the science out of the way. Back here, let's talk people. 30 seconds, maybe you can get it in 30 seconds to define what we mean by people-powered green transition.
So for people-powered green transition, we mean actually putting people and planet with the same prominence. If we're talking about addressing climate change, it shouldn't require a trade-off between people and the planet, given that people will have to power this transition. And so we really need governments and companies like all of you to dedicate equal weighting to reducing fossil fuels as you do the strength of your people transition programs, because we will have some upskilling and reskilling to do for our future.
Absolutely.
Somebody time me. I want to go back to Martin's, because I'm going to say, so I learned this, Martin, I've been studying. I learned that electrons and molecules are the perfect power pair, like a couple, perfect power couple. That's what I learned.
That's true.
They're the perfect power couple. You get it?
And indeed, it's important. They don't compete, they complement.
We need both, but for different things.
I'm telling you, power
exactly.
couple.
Then, Andrea, let's turn to you. How big of an opportunity is that? How far does it stretch beyond the energy sector? So you have 30 seconds to explain the sustainable supply chain challenge.
Okay, so to start with, as we are building trucks, buses, construction equipment, at the end what we are building is infrastructure, and we deliver transportation, and this is needed for the well-being of society. And guess what? It's still growing, because the world population is growing. So we cannot do it in the way we did it before. We cannot scale volume like we did before. Therefore, we have given a very bold commitment. 2040, we want to have a greenhouse gas neutral value chain, including our dealer and our supply network. And here comes the key challenge. This means for me, I have to bring my whole supply network to greenhouse gas zero. And in our network, then we talk about millions of companies.
Great, thank you so much. Well, let's give them a big round of applause for getting these terms. So we have a better reference now for our conversation. Let's go into the heart of the discussion. To what extent will green molecules be the driving force for the creation of sustainable jobs? And as you came into the room, you might have noticed a few numbers up on the screen. These all came from a brand new report by Cepsa and ManpowerGroup. And the report is called Green Molecules, the Upcoming Revolution in the European Employment Market. Now, you here in the room are the first ones to actually see this report. It's going to be officially launched after the conclusion of this event, and it's the most exhaustive study to date on the economic and employment significance of green molecules in Europe. So this conversation will give you a little bit of context to the report. So let me recap one of the key numbers that we showed you earlier. The report found that the shift to green molecules is expected to create 1.7 to 2 million new jobs in the EU and in the UK in the next 17 years. And the economic impact of those jobs will lead to a cumulative GDP growth estimated at 1.3 trillion euros. So let's talk about the economy. The report actually also shows that the majority of these jobs will be created in Spain, Germany, and France. So, Martin, with most of the EU jobs created in Spain, I wondered why is this particular to Spain, this whole green molecules economy?
Yeah, it is truly a Europe-wide opportunity, and the report has all the tables. You can find out what it means in Slovenia as well. But the Spain opportunity is particularly relevant, because what is important to know, central to all green molecules is a molecule called hydrogen. Both on the bio side, where you need a lot of hybridization, or on e-fuels that all starts with a hydrogen molecule, the hydrogen molecule is the most important component. And to make a green hydrogen molecule, you need cheap renewable power. Everybody here in chemistry class has put a little bit of electricity through water in there. It's called electrolysis, and you get oxygen and hydrogen. And using that process, that's the process to make green hydrogen. And so the cheapest green hydrogen comes from the place where you have the cheapest green electricity. That's also where the power couple comes in again. And Spain has the cheapest green electricity in Europe. It has a lot of sun, as all the tourists know. It has quite a lot of wind as well. But thirdly, importantly, it has quite a lot of space. In Spain, you can still, there's room in the land to build large solar, large onshore wind farms without necessarily competing for space with agriculture or cities or villages. And you need all three. You need sun, wind and space to be able to supply cheap green electrons at scale. So you can make cheap green hydrogen, so you make cheap green molecules. And that's why in Spain the opportunity is larger than anywhere else. But the opportunity is Europe-wide. But
Spain won't need all that energy, so how do you intend to bring that energy to other parts of Europe that are more industrial?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So since the start of the Industrial Revolution, Spain has imported almost all its energy. And now it will become an exporter of energy, which is quite a big change for the country. How it will be exported? In the fullness of time, there will be hydrogen pipelines connecting the main supply centers of Spain with the consumption centers in Northern Europe, where hydrogen is so much more expensive to make. But in the meantime, that will take a bit of time to create that infrastructure. So in the meantime, we will convert those green hydrogen molecules to ammonia and methanol, which are liquid at more or less room temperature, close to, and then we will ship it to the north of Europe in order to kickstart the energy transition. By the time the pipelines are in place, we will have an industry, we will have a lot of volume, and we can fill them and send the hydrogen north in one go. And Spain obviously also hopes to attract new industry to Spain, because of course industry tends to go to where energy is cheapest, and that's likely to be there.
Great, so you're building a maritime corridor. Becky, now the report also found that many of the jobs, actually a vast majority of the jobs, almost 90%, won't be in the energy sector, but in other sectors. So what kind of jobs are we talking about?
Yeah, so let's first talk about what we mean by green jobs, because when we hear that term, it evokes images of, fields of windmills or solar panels or electric vehicles. Yes, all of those will play a part, but 50%, half of the jobs in the green economy are actually modernized versions of existing jobs. So very accessible things that people can do. Think about a carpenter who builds today with something, will build with a sustainable material in the future. So that's an example. 46% of the new jobs in the green economy already exist. A solar installer, a solar engineer, things we already know about. So that means, for you math wizards in the room, 4% will be net new jobs. And they're net new, things like an edible design engineer, packaging engineer that creates packaging that can actually be consumed, and therefore there's no waste. And so the report also highlighted that we're seeing tremendous conversion in terms of the skills. So 20 occupations will make up 80% of the jobs, 20. And if you said, what are some of those 20? Scientists, machinists on the front line, things that we know of that will just be a quarter turn on the existing skills. And so I think it's really an opportunity for us to demystify part of this process and bring people along, because the jobs are very accessible.
Great. Well, it's very, very clear that this transition needs to be bigger than a country or a company. So, Andrea, let me turn to you. At Volvo, how do you coordinate that shift, across your supply chains? Because you mentioned in the beginning that you want to achieve a net zero supply chain.
Perhaps to start with, we believe definitely that we need the green electrons and the green molecules. So we strongly invest in battery electric, but also in fuel cell electric, and we believe in hydrogen in combustion engines. So we do not believe that the combustion engine will go. So when you have this in mind, what it means is that, of course, the supply network gets also broader, triggered by the technologies. So, of course, many years ago, we always had a starter battery in our truck, but now having these big batteries in our trucks and our buses, that's a different game. So our supply network is diversified even more. And it also means that we have to understand, when I think, for example, about CO2 neutrality, what is the CO2 emission from each and every product. And if I just give you an example, of course, to electrify commercial vehicles, the tailpipe emission goes down, but the CO2 footprint per truck goes up. So for us in purchasing, the challenge is growing. A battery electric truck has a double of a combustion engine. A fuel cell truck, it's close to 300%. So and this is what we have to work with, and where our people have to be educated to do the right choices.
That's a good keyword. Your people need to be educated. So let's talk about people and skills, so about the human side of this conversation. And there was another key number in the report that we showed you earlier, and it says by 2040, and you alluded to that, over half of all new jobs will require green skills. So it's going to be a big transformation, but people also need to be wanting this, Becky, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think part of it, I mean, you're right, people have to want it. And how do we start wanting things? It becomes clear to us our role as humans, not just for our jobs, but our lives in this whole green transition. And so we asked, in 7 countries, we asked workers, how are you thinking about the green transition? Like when we say that, what does that mean? Good news, 70% of knowledge workers, so more white collar, feel very positive about the green transition. They can see it, they can see the impact. However, only 57% of their peers in the blue-collar space feel the same positivity. So when you have that kind of delta, it's a leadership challenge, right? Like we're the ones who have to come in as leaders and help reconcile. And so then we started saying, okay, what kind of leadership do we need to help in this transition? So we did research on this, and what we found that 80% of the skills of a transformational leader stay the same. Drive, endurance, vision, ambition, all stays the same. But the 20% that's new is actually material. It's unleashing potential in people around you. It's daring to innovate, making informed risks, or risk decisions. So it really is the 20% that we as leaders have to bring people along. And then we need to create cultures of learnability. Continuous learning, unlearning, relearning. And then my favorite new term, I'm not even sure I can say it correctly, flexicurity. Flexicurity. So it's flexible skills, but with a secure job. Because we have people change, so jobs are going to change, but think about if we have people changing jobs all the time, security takes on a new definition. And so flexicurity is the future.
So you're getting the perspective of the workers as well, not just companies.
Yes.
So how do you make sure that you attract this talent,
Yes, well, I think part of it comes from telling the story. I mean, telling the impact. When we put people first in this transformation and talk to them again, not just about how it changes their job, but how it improves their life. You make it personal on how it improves their life. That's when we start seeing people really be drawn into the area.
Now, Andrea, the report also reveals that 7 in 10 global companies will seek professionals with green competencies for energy transition tasks, and that 94% face challenges in finding qualified candidates. So that must sound alarming to you at Volvo. How do you make sure that you fill that gap?
It's not alarming at all.
No?
No, because it's exactly what Betsy said. When we look, for example, in our production sites, then of course you can get scared when, the guys who build today a combustion engine, tomorrow they have to build battery electric driveline. Oh my God! But you have to really make a value mapping or a competence mapping. What are the skills needed? And you will also need in the future machining competence, automation competence, inline quality competence. All of this is already here. So the step is not at all massive. There is, of course, an add-on. When you have high voltage components in your production, you better train your people how to deal with it safely. Yeah? But it's no drama at all. No drama. And when I look now to our engineering community, we produce very complex products, and we always had very broad skills. And many of these skills are still needed. And when there is something specific, like chemistry of battery cells, then we partner with someone who knows it. We always say partnership is the new leadership, because in this transformation you also must be clear, what is it where I should not start to reskill my people? Where is it where I should partner with someone who has fantastic expertise? And finally, in my purchasing team, you know, of course there is now an add-on. The buyer has to understand circular models, decarbonizing, leverages, all of that. But this is a small portion of what they anyhow do. And by the way, they love it. They love it. This is purpose for real. So this is what really inspires the people and make the job more attractive. So alarm bell, not at all. I see it as great opportunity.
So your strategy is actually to partner with others. But I mean, is there still another, tactics that you're trying to develop in case there is a gap that you have?
Yeah, of course. We also, you said it very nicely. Sometimes you have to reskill people by 20%, right? But I think when you are engineer in our area, when you are working in our engineer, you are anyhow in a lifelong learning. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing which is shocking. So I'm not nervous for 1 second.
I can tell.
I love
that. Martin, what about you at Cepsa?
You can't be nervous now, Martin.
Are you more nervous about the gap and how do you deal with it?
So I'd say I'm a bit more nervous.
That's easy when I'm not nervous
but
at all.
that's a low bar to jump over, of course, given how calm we are in Volvo, which is great. First of all, I see a lot that you see as well. So people that operate a refinery can also operate a biofuels plant. It's a processing industry, can also operate a green methanol plant or an electrolyzer. So the people working in our processing facilities in our energy parks, their skills are very transferable, and it gives a lot of purpose to the population to know that now we are building green infrastructure. Exactly. And suddenly they can see employment for the decades rather than being in a mature and declining industry. On the commercial side, it's a little bit more tricky, because you can say somebody who sold kerosene all their lives can also sell sustainable aviation fuel. And to some extent, that's true. But I guess the two things that we need more of, and that are more cultural than something you send somebody to a course on, is risk taking. Because this world is simply less knowable. If you tell me, okay, we're going to produce all this green ammonia in 2028, what's the price going to be? Is much less knowable than, say, what is the price of crude oil going to be in 2029? And yet we're going ahead with it. And yet we need to sign commercial agreements in a more uncertain world. And so risk-taking is one. And the other one would be systems thinking. We've all grown up, I've lived my whole life in the energy industry, in an existing system. The system was stable, been stable for decades, was oil, gas, refining, bit of nuclear, and it worked. So you just had to know how to operate the system. Now we're designing a new system. And that is very uncomfortable if you haven't done systems thinking, if you haven't developed that skill, because you've always been part of a system that was kind of totally stable. And so systems thinking is a big new skill that we need to develop. If my salespeople go to a customer, let's say 3 years ago, they simply participated in the diesel tender. And that was just quantity, price, here you go, and payment terms. Now and that was with the procurement department somewhere in the basement of the company. Now they go to the top floor.
No offense, Andrew.
Sorry. That wasn't,
I listen now very carefully.
Yes.
Now they go to the top floor to talk to the board of the company about their energy transition strategy and about what energy transition options they have to continue to do their business, clean it, etc. And that's a very, very different skill. And so on the one hand, we are able to transform a lot of our people to the new world, but there are elements that require work. And that's not a skill, these skills are not readily available in the market. You can't just go and hire 30 of them. So it's development, in-house development, and working with external parties to bring these kind of new new skills about.
I want to go back.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead, please, Andrew. No, you.
Can I just say something to this uncertainty? Of course, here, I think, for example, the First Movers Coalition is fantastic, right? Because the First Movers Coalition, where we are a founding member of, is about collective demand for green molecules, for green steel, for green aluminium, to give companies the security, yeah, I can invest, because I assume it's quite high investment you have to take. So to take away this part of the uncertainty, and of course with scale, cost will also decrease, right? It's old logic. So I think this is why it's so important that we, in the ecosystem, we cooperate more, we partner more, that's for me the way to success.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just want to go back to your opening commentary, Martin, around pride in the work. And so there's hot off the press new data from a company called Edelman Global Perspective. And it says that 71% of people want a job with purpose, so talent, and 51% will choose where they work based on your climate strategy.
Yes.
And so we as employers, we have to have a climate strategy if we want to attract talent. And if you have a purpose, all the better.
Yep.
Especially the young generations, right?
But it's absolutely true for the younger generations. It's increasingly true for the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's a real life example. So the company I lead 2 years ago was 100% fossil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have published a strategy and we're investing almost all the money we have into becoming 60% green before the end of the decade, primarily green molecules. If we hire graduates from university, we have to do crowd control.
Yeah.
It's really, it's interesting how, and that was
Really?
never the case. It's,
So they want to come.
They want to come.
Oh.
It's the vision.
And so I think that purpose, that's all the opportunity here. These are up to 2 million new jobs, which is great news, by the way. We haven't really commented on the data point. But if we want the energy transition to be inclusive and just, then it has to excite not only us here on the podium and the people who have shown up, but the population at large. And 2 million new jobs, quality jobs, is really amazing news for everybody to get a bit more warmed up about why the energy transition is such a great idea. So yeah, it creates lots of engagement, and indeed it attracts talent, so it becomes virtuous.
Yeah.
So it seems that it attracts a lot of talent. However, the report found or predicted a gender gap at 37% in 2040, which is still unsatisfactory. So Becky, is this a given? Is there something we can do about it?
Yeah, this is a hot button issue for me, as you might imagine, as a female leader. This cannot be chapter 2 of STEM. Like, we cannot have women left behind in the green transition, especially when we're talking about such accessible roles. So the question becomes, what do we do? You said, is it predetermined? It is what the data shows, which means we have to intervene because green is here. Unlike some other technologies we're talking about further down the path, you can feel and touch the green transition. It's happening now. And so I would encourage all of us to start thinking about how we're pipelining women into this space. One, because it's good for business, but two, it's good for families, it's good for support. Like, it's the right thing to do. Some practical things, because you might look and say, hey, this particular person doesn't have all the skills in their background. Look at their potential, look at their learnability, think about adjacencies. I love the commentary on, structured thinking, critical thinking, connecting dots. Well, guess what? Naturally, women are a bit better at that when you look at assessments globally. So maybe that's a way to bring people in. So start hiring more women in that role, Martin.
Great. Well, let's give an applause to that.
Yes.
A round of applause to that.
Yes.
Well, 60% of our graduates are women this year.
I
so
love that, Martin. You get an applause for that.
Yeah. But I think Spain and Italy are quite good at that, right? When it comes to gender balance in these kind of jobs.
We have a gap to fill. So.
Still, okay, good. Well, now we have someone in the audience who I would like to turn to. It's Sophie Lamban. She's sitting right here in the first row. She's the founder and CEO of Kite Insights. She's a curator of the New York Times Climate Hub and also an editor at Women's Forum for the Economy and Society. So I would like to hear your perspective with your background. What do you think? What else can we do for women to see themselves in this sector, in these roles, and also wanting to acquire new necessary skills?
Yeah, thank you. First, I will start by sharing your enthusiasm or outrage and congratulating you, Martin, for having such a strong representation of women in your sector that has been historically very male-dominated. I think I have 3 points. I mean, first of all, for me, it's about intentionality. How intentional are we at making those jobs attractive for women, and how we make those narratives very compelling. At the most basic level, as you said, we really need all hands on deck. You know, this is about the transformation of the whole value chain. It's a system change. Systems are changed by people, and how can we possibly change systems with one hand tied behind our back, with not 100% of the population part of it? And there is a huge appetite. You know, our study shows that 83% of employees across the board, across generation and genders, are wanting to act on climate. They don't know yet necessarily how to. Second point, we usually, in terms of narrative, when we speak about women in the context of climate, is usually about how women are disproportionately impacted by climate negatively, which is often the case, particularly in the South. But my view is that in those transition, women are actually disproportionately impactful. And we need to start really getting those narratives out. There are studies that show that, without falling into gender stereotype, that really show that women are in fact disproportionately motivated by the potential of working on positive projects that have a positive impact. And how do we start telling those stories of positive impact in hard-to-abate industries that need to transform, and to be really intentional about how we do that? And my final point, which is a bit more macro, I think we just need to recognize that clearly this panelist does already, is that we are not going to change a system towards being more sustainable by using the same skills and behaviors that have created that system in the first place. Now, the system that we're trying to move away from has historically, and still is in some parts of the world, male-dominated. So for me, there's a hint here that we need new skills, new behaviors around partnerships, around change system thinking. It goes for courage, it goes for empathy. In fact, there is a very interesting framework that I would encourage you to look at called the Inner Development Goals that really highlight the kind of behaviors and skills we need to deploy to accelerate the transition from commitment to action. And women have clearly a very big part to play in that space.
Thank you.
I just want to put a
Sophia,
pin
please.
in what you said, because you said something I think so profound, from disproportionately impacted to disproportionately impactful. And I think that's the summary. So thank you. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
No, I think, like you said, it's skills. Like I said, I think there is something needed, but no drama. Behavior, competence, mindset. Mindset and attitude. This is, I think, the key elements to understand what do you want to achieve. And it must be not a nice add-on. It must be in your daily work, in your daily decisions, in the way you manage. And just a small note, of course, gender diversity is super important, but I also believe strongly in having fully diversified teams in many aspects, not only gender. I think these are the high-performance teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about diversity of
Diverse
perspectives.
and inclusive, that everyone really can come with his full own to work and contribute.
Sorry, Martin.
No, I just want to indeed pick up on I think you used the word, or maybe I would have liked you to use the word, integrative as a behavior. And this is such an important concept. If we think of a world where all heavy trucks in Europe, I think we have 60,000 of them, I believe, will need to go from driving on diesel to driving on hydrogen. There's not a single company in the world that can achieve that. Somebody needs to make the hydrogen. Somebody needs to make the hydrogen engine. Somebody needs to make the
charging infrastructure.
Somebody needs to buy them, and the customers need to ask it. And so you need to move away from a system that was neatly organized, everybody had their own task, to something that's totally integrative, and where someone can build a coalition with all those people acting at the same time in the same manner, so we can get that done. And that's in terms of behavior, in terms of the inclusiveness and integration required, is a totally different game than what we've done so far.
Yeah, really.
And that calls exactly for the kind of culture change that you alluded to.
Thinking end to end, and we have to understand the transformation is a change of a whole ecosystem. And like you said, Martin, everyone has to move in the same time.
Absolutely. Great. Now, for the final part of the discussion, I would like to delve a bit deeper into practical steps that governments, businesses, and educators can do to prepare for the green revolution. The report proposes 10 measures to help attain the potential of the green molecule transition, and it outlines a 17-year implementation plan. We're, of course, not going into detail into all of that, but I just want to hear your perspectives. So let's start with you, Andrea. From Volvo's perspective, how do you see yourself, Volvo? Is it a talent hub? And what do you need from governments or educators or universities to actually help, that you can get this talent out there?
Yeah, also here I think we have to address the whole ecosystem. So what we do ourselves, we have a Volvo Group Academy where we train our people by ourselves. But of course, before we develop any special trainings, we first look what is available in the open market. We work with academia. For example, last week we have started a PhD scholarship on hydrogen, green hydrogen in combustion engine. What I expect from academia, of course, I do expect that they are aware of the new needs, of the new technologies, and they address this, right? Public, it is, of course, also about funding. And perhaps big companies like us, we can set up our own academy, but we have to support small and medium companies. And here it is about money, and it is about support from academia.
And do you get that support? Do you feel that it's going to the right direction?
I see that there are programs out, some funding availability for this. And of course, we have cooperation with some big universities worldwide. Yeah.
But aligning education and also to the skills that you need in the companies has always been a little bit of a challenge. So Martin, how can we encourage the appropriate culture shift to allow companies, educators and governments to truly work together to get this transition going?
Yeah, it's a tricky area. And I do indeed believe charity starts at home. So we are developing a green academy where our own people can go through a reskilling or an upscaling or a whatever their starting point is. And we're working also together with ManpowerGroup to see how can we make that an open ecosystem. So it's not just, my people, but it's accessible to others as well. And why only Spain? So that could be that Green Academy could be a growing thing. But it won't resolve it, of course. You need governments and ministries of education, etc., to structurally reform the kind of education we offer in order to prepare the workforce for green transition. And that's tricky because it tends to be a slow process.
Yes.
And I'm hopeful that the kind of studies that ManpowerGroup and Cepsa have just undertaken will inspire people to say, okay, well, let's really get down to business here. And start to change things now rather than have a working group that in the next 36 months is going to come up with a recommendation. Because in the next 36 months, I need thousands of capable workers in the south of Spain to build green molecule infrastructure. So I can't wait for the recommendation from the working group. And I do get, if you talk to the right people, I get energy also from government officials that say, no, let's solve it now. Let's get to work with the universities, etc., and move on. So I think the opportunity will hopefully sell itself, but I think we should help it sell itself a lot.
So you said it's a slow progress. We actually need to move fast. We need to move people from different sectors to other sectors to bring also new ideas into the game. How can we make this happen, Becky?
Yeah, so talent mobility. That's a big term that now is one of the key trends that we'll see for 2024. So again, you're not hearing me say in 10 years from now. I'm talking about this year. We'll start seeing more talent mobility, and we'll start seeing more pre-skilling. So pre-skilling will be another key word. You've heard upskill, reskill, now it's pre-skill. And pre-skill is really about readying the workforce, like having people ready for what's next, not just what's now. But that also means we have to start evaluating people differently. And this is where it gets tricky in our business, because employers like to say, I want 10 years experience in X, Y, and Z. And when skills are moving at the pace of technology, you can't really do time-based requirements anymore. You have to do capability-based requirements, and they may be capabilities the person has never had a chance to demonstrate. And so it really is talking about, it speaks to taking bets on potential and evaluating people, talent on learning ability. Like what is their learnability? What is their curiosity? And there's assessments for this. There's elements that we know are predictive, soft skills that are predictive of your ability to learn both soft and hard skills of the future. In other words, how learnable are you? That's probably not appropriate English, but how learnable, what is your learnability? But it's really important because we're going to be moving people so quickly that becomes really crucial. And it's the only way to future-proof your workforce is to make sure you have high curiosity, high learning capacity, and the ability and the interest in talent mobility.
It's actually a huge chance.
It's huge. I'm, as you hear, I'm quite optimistic about it. I mean, these are accessible opportunities. They're not things we're making up. They're happening today.
And I'm very optimistic that we will close the gap. A data point I would give you, I think my hygiene team now is about 60 people, 5 of whom came from outside, and 55 who already worked for Cepsa. We probably would have loved to take 20 people from outside, but they're not there. You ask any recruiter or any headhunter, and they have a stack this high of requests for people with hygiene experience, and 3 candidates. So by necessity, which is great, you actually reskill, upskill, and before you know it, your own people are better than the people you attracted from outside. So I think it will solve itself simply by the force of the development and the power of the opportunity.
I agree.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I would like to turn to the audience now, as we have a few minutes left for your questions. So if you have any questions to Andrea, Martin, or Becky, please raise your hand. Don't be shy. Or comment. Yes.
I would have a question. So the report focuses on Europe, obviously, but climate change is a global issue, right? And Andrea said the population is getting bigger in the world. However, in the developed countries, not so much, actually. So a lot of the excess development of people will not actually be in the high-skilled countries. How can we leverage maybe outside of Europe or the US people, skills, new skills, while at the same time I feel they're also contributing to a larger part to the pollution, right? So a bit of an oxymoron.
Thank you very much.
If I can answer, so in our case, we are a truly global company, so what we do is across the globe. So we do not say we start now in Europe or whatever. So all the training, the upskilling, this is a global effort. And I can not say that I see massive differences. What Becky said is for me super important. I see so much interest and curiosity of people everywhere to work in areas where they really can shape a world they want to live in, right? This is such a nice vision that I would not limit it to Europe or any region.
No, I think the opportunity is global, and energy is a very, very global community, and a very global system, of course. However, it's important. Electricity is quite a local thing, and as we electrify the economies, from the current 20% electricity as part of the total global mix to 50%, more of energy will be locally produced and locally consumed. So in a way, the employment opportunity becomes more local, partly because of technical necessity, that's just you can't move electricity around the world, but partly also because there is a change in the world around energy security. Countries and groups of countries want a bit more of their own energy, and so that's where green molecules will also come in. So it will be less global than it is today, but I think the global opportunity in this space is everywhere. We just didn't have the money to fund a global study.
Well answered.
We start with Europe, but it projects the whole world.
Yes. Stay tuned.
Any further questions? There's a question. The microphone is coming. We have a microphone from the back. Yeah. Does it? Try again. Try again. Try again. Oh.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, my name is Suzuki, Japan. From Japan, I'm an advantage partner, Japan's private equity, and then Japan we are launching the first kind of hydrogen fund promoted by the major Japanese corporations. You know, Japan, maybe Korea. Japan and Korea will be the biggest importer of the green molecule in 2050, of course. And we are investing in value chain and globally, but of course, off-taking is an issue. How and then we are trying to reach the, of course, many investable, financeable project, but finding off-taking for a long time and then putting project finance is very hard. Of course, it's a challenge for everybody, but how do you see and how can you achieve this, the gap? And then more FID project coming up. How cooperation, I understand, but how? That's I want to ask. Thank you.
So I think it's a great question. Actually, Japan and Korea have a rich history to go back to. The global gas industry or the global energy industry was started by Japan and then by Korea because they had no natural gas and they wanted it. As I said, they have no green molecules and they're going to want green molecules. The way it was solved about 50 years ago in the LNG sector was that Japan and Korea invested in projects outside Japan and Korea. Became equity partners, would buy 20% of this project, 20% of that project, lend money to it. So essentially resolved the financing question. And I think that is still a very, very powerful way to attract energy to your country. If you're the investor, you're going to decide where the molecules are going to go. And eventually the scale up of green molecules is not limited by technology. The technology is actually quite an old technology. As I said, electrolysis we've all done in school, and methanol and ammonia are 100-year-old technologies. So there's no technological limits. There are no limits to the amount of sun and wind in the world. It's just money and execution. So if you bring money, there's a lot of people in the world willing to execute. So I think Japan and Korea, it's relatively simple. Follow your LNG example, which solved the energy equation in Japan and Korea for the last 50 years, and do the same for green molecules, and you'll do everybody a favor.
Thank you very much. Let me see, maybe one more question. It's good? Okay, good. Great. Oh, yeah, you have one more? Okay.
I don't know if this is the microphone.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Hello, everybody. It is Salanin ManpowerGroup. So we've been speaking about the need for upskilling. You've been mentioning that sometimes the public sector is leaping a little bit behind on the development. So where will upskilling at scale come from, and what are the collaborations that will be needed? And maybe you have been mentioning 55 people that moved already to hydrogen from internal. How did you manage, and how are you planning for all those tens of thousands of workers?
Yes, so I'll start, and then you can answer the specific for you. Upskilling at scale is interesting because we'd love to depend on, I didn't weigh in if you noticed on the university conversation, because I'm increasingly convinced we can't wait on them. And it's not that I don't want to, and it's not that I don't think they have a responsibility. They have an entire infrastructure built for a different purpose, which is called tenure. And so they have grown people this way, and we need to grow people this way in the future. And so that's going to take time for them to adjust, and we don't have the time. So my view is upskilling and reskilling comes with partnerships just like the one we're doing with Cepsa and ManpowerGroup, where we are mapping, okay, what are the skills we need? What are the skills we have? How do we actually, person by person, start moving people into new opportunities? Because again, when you said 20%, our data would say 25% of the job is new. But when it's that small, they're actually learnability opportunities that can be on the job at the point of work. And that versus sending somebody off for an 8-week program or a 12-week program, teach them on the job and in the flow of work, which, by the way, is a much more effective way for humans to learn, is in the process.
Martin?
And I would also not overestimate the degree to which the truth is somewhere out there and learnable. As we were saying, we're building a system. Yeah. We don't know exactly how it's going to work, and we're adjusting every day. So you're much better off just joining it,
being part
in relative ignorance and helping to build it, rather than hoping that the truth is somewhere out there on an e-module, and as long as I complete it now, I know. Because by the time you've completed, that system will have moved on. So I think there will be a lot of on the job and in the company and reskilling and upskilling. But it is clear this is a marathon. This is going to take decades. So we do need to work with the universities, with the ministries of education, etc., to make sure that the national infrastructures start to produce at least a basic material that we need. And in the meantime, we'll need to overdo it ourselves in order to make sure that we can ramp up at the scale that we want and not be slowed down by the lack of skilled people.
I think the most important is just start. Yeah. Don't be afraid, just start on the job and believe in your people. Everyone is eager to learn, and also here, don't make a big drama out of it. Start to walk and don't wait for anyone. And the system will catch up eventually.
Great. So that was the call to action, start. And now, thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear your perspectives. Also, it's clear that the future is not guaranteed without having the right people, but you're hopeful, so that's good to hear. Thank you very much, Andrea Fuder, Martin Wetzelaar, and Becky Frankovic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention.
It was a pleasure.